So, welcome to Becoming Legendary. This week, we spoke with Chris and Anthony from the book Killer Plant-Based Cooking. And Brian, this was a fun conversation.
It was a real fun conversation. Off to a little bit of a slow start, but things picked up, and we really got to experience, their passion for cooking, and they both come from different backgrounds. So I found that the synergy between the two really kind of made for this unique offering.
Yeah, so a chef and a psychologist that came together to create a plant-based cookbook. And I think what you kind of hit on there was the thing that really struck home with me was that there is a lot of heart and passion in both of them, and they really care about what they're doing, what they're producing, and that really shone through in this conversation. I really felt like there was a genuineness to the conversation that has really been, for the last couple of conversations we've had with people, just really genuine, rad people, which has been fun.
Yeah, super fortunate with these guests. I think they really care about you, the listener, right? The human being, and really kind of deepening your experience of life through food and through these rad recipes. So check them out. Be sure to like, share, and comment on this beautiful podcast. We put a lot of time and effort into this. Any effort and energy you put out would be amazing as well.
Yeah, Brian and I would love that support. It helps us a ton. We don't ever talk about promoting this thing because it is just fun for us. But we have enough rad conversations on here. We want more people to listen, more people to hear them. So if you take the 5 minutes to leave us a comment, we'll send you a virtual hug.
100%.
So without further ado, let's get to Becoming Legendary with the authors of Killer Plant-Based Cooking, Healthy Recipes with a Vegeance, Chris and Anthony.
There are no gold medals for Down Dog. Maximize every opportunity so that you can become legendary. What adjustments can you make right now to make yourself 1% better? Your only goal is to be the best version of you.
Chris, Anthony, welcome to Becoming Legendary. How are you guys today?
Doing great. Doing well. Thank you. How are you?
Good. Heck yeah. Really good. Thank you for asking. Can we just start out? Yeah, super excited to have this chat. So can we just start out with you guys? You can flip a coin. Whoever wants to go first can go first, but just giving us the quick little introduction to us and your audience, who you are.
Sure. I'll go first.
Yeah.
I'm Chris Lenza. I am a executive chef. I live in Phoenix, or the Gilbert area of Phoenix, and I'm a chef. I'm known as a wellness chef in our community. I'm known for creating more healthier, more health approached recipes. That's what I do now.
Heck yeah. Anthony, can we get that same kind of 30-second, 10,000-foot view of you?
Sure. I am a clinical psychologist. I work for the Department of Veterans Affairs. So I do a lot of psychotherapy with veterans. That's my day job. I do a lot of trauma treatment and some mindfulness stuff through the whole health program that the VA has. And then my side gig with Chris here is we are collaborating on other book projects and launch the business together, Look Within Education.
And how'd you guys come together?
Yeah.
Well, I think I'll jump in on that. I met Chris, a long time ago. It was in the 5th grade. I think I was in the 5th grade, and my family had moved to a different part of town, and I met Chris. He was playing basketball in front of his house, and I just walked up to him and introduced myself. And our friendship started there. And then we became really good friends in high school. And even back then, I was thinking about this today, even back then, Chris was coaching me on not diet, but weightlifting mostly. And I was the skinny, tiny, probably the shortest, skinniest person in the group. And so we did a lot of lifting, and I was trying to get bigger. So Chris was advising on how to put on muscle mass. So at that time I was taking some weight gainer.
Nice. That is, I would have never predicted that story, but I love that that's where this started. Was there a basketball game? Did you challenge him to a basketball game?
No challenge. I just was looking for a friendship.
Cool.
Heck yeah. So I just need to dive into this a little bit more. So as a fifth grader, that's probably, let's see, like 10, 11?
I think so.
Is that fair? So were you like remarkably outgoing and social?
No, that was my problem. I was not only like on the smaller end, but I was really shy. So it took a lot of guts for me to do that.
Yeah, I love it. That's rad.
Yeah.
Chris, is that exactly how you remember it?
Yeah, Anthony was very timid, I recall, and but he was very kind, as he is now, and that's what that's a great friend to have, to be quite honest. So I
Sure.
can see why we still have a great relationship years and years later.
That's cool.
And years later, you guys got together and you wrote a book. Was that the first project, the collab project?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
book is right here. It's Killer Plant-Based Cooking, Healthy Recipes with a Vegeance. What was the inspiration? How do we get started down the path of writing this book together?
I can jump in there, and I can also, Anthony, chime in. But it's interesting how Anthony and our relationship, how it developed. There were pockets where we haven't really talked for 5 to 10 years. And I think that the last time we talked right before this cookbook journey was about 10 years. And I was traveling through California, San Francisco area, working in wineries and restaurants, and Anthony let me stay at his apartment at the time. So then fast forward 10 years later, we talked about a lot of things and caught up, but we really disconnected. But Anthony called me. I can remember I was on a road trip I think back to California, and Anthony called, and I didn't recognize the number, but I answered, and we started chatting, and fairly quickly Anthony asked, I really want to do a cookbook. And at the time Anthony was interested in Italian cookbooks, and he knows that that's a passion of mine. That's kind of my heritage of Italian American, and we were always cooking a ton of Italian recipes. But my journey at the time, I was vegan for 5 years, and I was creating a lot of plant-based recipes for myself, but also I was interested to share those recipes with as many people as possible in our community, and wanted to get them into our educational systems. But I really didn't know how to, and I wasn't really thinking about a cookbook. So I thought that this would be an opportunity to take that. And Anthony paused for a second, because I don't think he was expecting that response, because Italian is like that's in my blood. But that's easy, right? So I wanted something a little bit more challenging, but that would have a little bit more impact on people's health. So from there we started conversations. We hit the ground running really quickly. I had a bunch of recipes set. Yeah, that's kind of how it got started.
Cool.
The path. Go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say, Anthony, do you remember that exact same way? I was going to just mirror the question back that Patrick just asked about, because I'm sure that story's a little bit different in your mind.
Yeah. I had a grueling 5 years of grad school, finishing my doctorate in psychology. And I was actually doing a postdoc fellowship I was finishing that up, and I just, you know, needed another project to work on. And I really like doing collaborative projects. I like writing. I knew how to write a book from writing a dissertation. So I wanted to apply that skill, but I didn't want to do it alone. So I kept thinking to myself, who would be a great person to, you know, collaborate with? And yeah, I was kind of working on this side project with a family member of a Italian cookbook, but that didn't work out. So then I thought of Chris, because, you know, I was following him on social media, and I knew he was doing really well as a chef, and I knew he had what it takes to put together a book, or at least a perseverance to put that together. Just from what I known him in his career and in high school too. So I called him up out of the blue and just said, "Hey, I jumped right in. I'm, you know, want to write a book together," and he was all for it. I was surprised, and yeah, I was surprised by the turn. I thought Italian would be his interest, but then he said plant-based, and that was great for me because although I wasn't vegan, but I was primarily a plant-based eater. With my wife being a dietitian, we ate very similar style. So it fit really good. I liked that idea. So I was like, let's go with it. And then, yeah, Chris started pumping out recipes. Like I couldn't keep up. I couldn't keep up.
Yeah, the book is really thorough. That's for sure. I have a question. I'm always curious about when people embark on an endeavor to write books. I'm most curious about what was omitted. So I'm just going to, I have a list of things that are written down that I thought were really interesting. You have things in the book like meal planning, evidence for a plant-based diet, killer, can't read my writing, of course, kitchen tools. Thank you. Killer healthy, important substitute.
I really like that list. I thought that was an interesting list. Yeah.
Yeah. So killer drinks, killer soups and salads, killer entrees, desserts, dressings and sides, all of the above. So I'm just curious, as you guys went through the editing process, was there something that you omitted that maybe you'd like to see in a future book, or I'm just kind of curious about that.
I'll have to think more, but I think one thing was the psychology piece, I didn't put a lot of that aspect into it. So I think if I were to do it again or do the follow-up book is going to be more psychology-based behavioral interventions to help people make these changes. So I think
Nice.
A lot of that stuff was, I did put some in the introduction. And there's some tips in there, the introductory material, but I think a lot more could be said there.
It is a uniquely laid out book concept though, right? Like, so you guys can give that description a little bit better, but I think it's represented as like a cookbook, but it's definitely it has a unique place in the cookbook world, right? There's like beautiful recipes, but then there are so many additional layers that you guys have put in there. How did we get to the point where we started deviating away from the more traditional cookbook concept?
Chris, you want to dive in on that?
Yeah, I can get started on that. I mean, when we started out the cookbook, we were covering everything. Like, when I mean I felt like we just had too much going on. And as each week progressed with new recipes and Anthony providing feedback, it took a different direction. I mean, this book, I believe, is 3 years we worked on it. We took so many different turns. It was, and I agree, there are so many layers. I can't believe, to be quite honest with you, like I now, after it's done, can kind of sit back and take a break and look at it from a different view almost. And I can't believe, like, still now, like the layers that we are covering in there. And then we pulled so much out because we had so many ideas. We want to, honestly, a lot of our passion, we're passionate about it. So we wanted to help people as much as we can. So, and we covered everything. And then it was like, all right, we can't cover all of this. So let's eliminate that. But, you know, I think what really is spectacular, I think that really stands out is that, you know, we hit a lot of different avenues. It's plant-based. You're going to find a lot of vegan recipes, vegetarian recipes. You're going to find recipes that are made without gluten, which is kind of a concern to some people now that consume that kind of diet. And I use the word diet, but what was really important to us we didn't want to create a diet. You know, we did not want to put a diet cookbook out. So I did want to make that clear. So if we found ourselves going in that direction, we always pulled back a little bit. And that wasn't, we're not trying to encourage people to eat a certain way. We want to open up people's minds or people's thought process of how to approach food, how to approach plants. Plants can be really fun to cook with. You can create a lot of flavor through plants. And just go on through the list, you know, we have like a low sodium. So Anthony and I both have hypertension. So we don't really consume a lot of sodium in our dishes, you know. So it was important for us to make recipes that we like. So we were thoughtful of making a book that had low sodium, but it also gives the person who's cooking the book or cooking the recipes, if they want to add more sodium, you can. You know, we make that point throughout the book, and the same thing with meat. We're not asking or telling that you should be vegan or vegetarian or plant-based. We also give opportunity in there that if you do consume meat, you can complement all of these recipes with some plants or with some animal proteins or whatever it may be. So I think it has so many directions, but I can just finish with that and say that it really comes from a place that has a lot of passion behind it.
Yeah, you can tell. It's almost like my wife has a cookbook that is like recipes from my mom and from her mom that is sort of like combined into this cookbook, and it reminded me of that intimate of experience. Like you brought us into your home, into your kitchen, if you will. So I thought that was a really cool part that stood out to me.
Yeah, it's great to hear that.
The passion component, because I know you mentioned that there was at least a stint of your experience where you were vegan, and that was kind of around the conception of this. So the passion, I think, obviously comes from both of your life experience here. Chris, can you just give me a little of that, like food story? Because I think everybody has those things. So many people have the experience of vegan, whether that's like an hour or a week or 6 years or a lifetime, right? But can you just kind of walk through how you got into down that path first and how that really sparked this inspiration?
Yeah, I think there's multiple components to the reason why I chose to do this path. You know, the first thing that kind of stands out was that I have high blood pressure and high cholesterol. I'm not one that wants to combat that with medication if I don't have to. So I wanted to try to change my diet, and that was the first approach that I took. Second, I honestly like being in this industry really my whole life since I was 15. You know, it's been a recurring theme to see so much meat just through on so many menus, and not that's a bad thing, but I think there's room to grow, to cut back a little bit, and I noticed that. And I wanted to be able, when I had that kind of aha moment, I wanted to be able to give that aha moment or teach that to people, that you know, every meal doesn't need to be consumed with animal, right? So also I wanted to challenge, my path in my career has taken me in so many different directions. I like to experiment. I like to grow in ways and try to find things that I don't normally do. Well, I spent my whole life learning how to cook meat really, really good, so it was like this all just kind of made sense. And then to kind of finish it was like, as an executive chef, I have an opportunity to change the way people approach dishes, and educate them. I not only can do I cook your meal or plan the menu, cook the meal and provide that to you, but I could also have a conversation with you why I chose this plant-based food, and just kind of educate you. And now this hopefully opens up your mind to maybe approach the plate a little bit differently.
Yeah.
I like that. Now, Anthony, I've got to ask this. I want to find out how your path of eating sort of developed as well too. And I'm wondering if it had something to do with your experience living in an ashram. Patrick is a yoga teacher. I'm a yoga teacher. I know yes. Chris is of course, we've had discussions and talks about, we've been hung out a few times about yoga and stuff like that. So I just want to open that door and see if you can shed some light into that experience. I think that's something really interesting.
Yeah, I think that would be one of the main ways moving into an ashram. But taking a couple steps back, I had a lot of high stress. Like I mentioned, grad school earlier. Grad school was really stressful. And I came from also a background where a diet, my family upbringing was, spaghetti and meatballs, meat and potatoes kind of thing. And the high stress. And I found this, I was in New York City at the time living. I was going to grad school at the New School for Social Research. And at the time there was a yoga center right across the street. And I walked in there and I was like, I need some help with managing stress. And, they pointed me to yoga classes. So I started taking yoga. But they also had an Ayurveda doctor there. And I hooked up with her. And she taught me a lot about how to change, you can do yoga, take some asana classes, but really you have to change your lifestyle and mainly the diet. And that's where I was introduced first to like a vegetarian diet and the value of eating more vegetables, and also like how that plays with the makeup, the doshas, as it's talked about in Ayurveda. So I had to learn a specific type of diet that's individual to me, and that really helped and that really clicked. So I became vegetarian at that point. I fell in love with yoga, still do it almost, at least every other day. And that led me to the ashram. So I ended up moving to San Francisco to move into the Yoga Society of San Francisco. And there, I just deepened the vegetarian diet, way of eating and the yoga practices. And that's where I did my yoga teacher training as well.
Super cool.
Yeah. That's wild. It's wild.
It is. Yeah.
And that ashram is really cool because you have this, it's like a temple in the middle. Well, not in the middle of the city, but it's in San Francisco, right in the Mission District. And here sits a temple. And it's like, wow, I can enjoy the city because I love living an urban lifestyle. And also, learn meditation and yoga and Ayurveda on a deeper level. So it was really cool.
That is cool. There's something that attracts me to that lifestyle, or to that commitment, I would say. Patrick and I were just talking about a friend that used to work at one of his studios that is now a full-time yogi in where?
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica. Yeah. He's kind of disengaged from this Western lifestyle and took that leap of faith. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think my wife would appreciate that leap right now, but it's something that's crossed my mind in quite frequently, actually.
Yeah,
Right.
That-
Ryan predicts.
that kind of stirs up some memories of when we were planning this cookbook. We had ideas around, and it still may be for version 2, but we wanted to do a yoga pose that would complement a recipe.
Oh, cool.
For every recipe, you would have a yoga pose for that. So that's possibly in our future, but I think that would be really cool. It's something you don't really see out there, but also
Oh.
bring some meaning behind it. You know, why you would eat this specific split pea soup or whatever it may be for this position, and put some meaning behind it. So yeah, that was one of our. I think we may have even started our first chapter with that, but
That's rad. As opposed to the standard American diet, every pose would be shavasana. You can't even move after eating the standard American diet,
well,
So,
I mean, exactly to the point.
yeah,
Like we want to be, to be able to approach a meal, eat a meal, but also feel like you can go accomplish something after. I mean,
Exactly.
there's a time and place for comfort food, for sure. But if you're active, busy lifestyle and you want to keep moving, and I think there's a place for that approach. So
100%. Sounds like a podcast episode 2 when that book is finished with us.
yeah, we're still trying to figure that out, but that'd be great. Thank you. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Of course.
I'm really amazed. Like, if you think about where was the basketball hoop that we met? What state?
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 11-year-olds in Pennsylvania meet, grow up, both of them are vegetarians. Man, the likelihood of this story is so remarkably small. I love this. I just love the fact that this has happened.
Well, there was
Chris,
another. Sorry to
Tell me.
interrupt. Just
Oh, no.
one other there. I mentioned I went to school in New York City. So when I was coincidentally, I guess, when I was moving to New York, Chris, I think you were just moving to New York too, because I remember I was
Of
telling-
course.
I called
I was
Chris
in
up. I'm
culinary
like,
school.
yeah, he was going to culinary school. So I remembered stopping by at his mother's house she was packing me up to give food to him, and I drove it out to New York City, and
That's super
we had met
rad.
out there as well. And then our paths sort of split off again.
That is
What-
amazing.
What years were you guys in New York City?
I got there in 2003.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, agreed. Yeah,
Yeah.
at that time.
I was there from 2005 to like 11.
Okay.
So we might have just crossed paths there slightly. I absolutely was not into yoga though. I call that my previous life. Everything has changed for the better since then. So yeah. New York's a wild place, or it can be a tame place, depending on what your experience or what you're called to experience, I should say. Did the New York experience? Were you guys hanging out there as well, like quite frequently, or is that something that you kind of just touched on as you guys progressed in your different career paths?
Yeah, we hung out a little, right?
Yeah, we hung out a little bit. We took some rides back from New York back to Pennsylvania around the holidays together. Share, some car sharing and
Sure.
stuff like that. But I was in culinary school there, and I was also, I wanted that big city experience.
Mm.
To the 5-star restaurants, and I worked a lot, so we really didn't meet as much as we wanted to. I was 7 days a week, all nights.
Were you?
Anthony was, yeah, I don't think we connected as much as we could, but I still remember carrying your mattress down those 3 flights of stairs. In or out. I think it was out.
Yeah. I remember carrying a mattress from the mattress store up to my apartment. It was the weirdest experience because I had just moved there. I didn't have a bed, and I was like, wait a minute. The mattress store is like a block away. That means no one's gonna drop it off to my house and bring it up. I gotta carry this thing. It was like this. I was like, where am I? What is going on right now? Such a weird. I moved there from Ohio, or actually from Atlanta, Georgia. So just like it was an eye-opening experience, to say the least. What restaurants did you work in there, Chris? Was there any ones that you could name off the top of your head?
I try to move around as many as I can. They were 3-star at the time.
Cool.
I did a lot of stages, which would be like an opportunity to go into high-profile kitchens, but not commit, but to learn what the chefs were doing at that moment. And usually, I tried to find the places that were more cutting edge as possible. That's why I was there. Unfortunately, they don't really pay at the time. They didn't pay for stages, so that was all done on your own. So I would do my Monday through Friday school, and then at nights and weekends I would work for as far as like stages, just get to know people and network. But yeah, so there were French, Italian, and a Swedish restaurant.
Cool. Wide variety.
Yeah. As you can see, many of the recipes have a kind of a global experience. Global, not really authentic, but they were inspired. I had a lot of inspirations from restaurants that I worked through. That was important for me. But.
Absolutely, that adds to the depth of the cookbook for sure. Appeals to not only more people, but more people's palate, right? Because everyone's palate is so unique and different. That's something that I took away from that too. Absolutely a global type of influence cuisine, if you will, or menu.
Yeah, and that was part of the, when we were planning the recipes, is we wanted to try to be as diverse as possible. Not too many global, but have some in there for folks that maybe are familiar, for that comforting chicken marsala that they normally would eat, but something with a spin on it. But we also wanted to create some more simple recipes that can be very approachable for anybody, really. So I think that was a tough part, to try to find that balance of how complicated do we make the recipes, but our goal was to make them as approachable as possible, and that's where Anthony had to come up with the rating each dish of easy, moderate, or difficult. So that was something that we added in there to accomplish that.
I really appreciated the chef's commentary piece as well. I think in some of the cookbooks that I took a holistic nutrition training, 100-hour program or 200 hours over at Southwest Institute of Healing Arts, and just looking through cookbooks and the experiences that we had, some of the literature we had to read there wasn't, I liked how you called it the chef's commentary. Like, this is coming from me, who I put this recipe together, and here's my 2 cents about it. That was really rad, because sometimes you don't see that honesty, right? I mean, that's an opinion that you sort of laid out for people to digest. And I thought that added a component of depth to the experience of reading the book as well.
Well, that was all Anthony, so he could he was definitely wanted that, and his idea, and I wanted it too, but he came up with it, and it was something that he worked really hard on getting that right. But I don't know, Anthony, you probably could talk a lot more about that. But
well, no, I mean, that sounds right. I was just I would tap into Chris's head a bit on the recipe to try to understand like where he was coming from, and then I would just sometimes take notes on what he was saying and then put it right in there and then rewrite it. But so yeah, I think that is a really cool feature of the recipes. You have that, and then the header note, the introduction to the recipe too. We try to add some like nutritional facts about each recipe.
Yeah. So Anthony, when you picked up the phone to make this call to Chris, how much of the book was already like crystallized in your head?
Very little. Like I said, I was going in there thinking this would be an Italian cookbook. I didn't have, it was a really different, like I had to take a really different approach because, like I said, I wrote a dissertation. I worked on another a yoga book before. So the recipe book was a completely different structure internal, like interior wise. So I had to, study a lot of other cookbooks. I remember going to the library and just getting like 20 or 30 cookbooks just to get an idea of how they're laid out structurally. So I just knew I wanted to work with Chris on doing a book project. And so I just saw the end in mind, more like we have this finished project ready to go on Amazon. I didn't know how we were going to get there exactly. Like I had some skills.
Perfect. Yeah.
I knew he had a lot of skills. So, we just hit the ground running.
Yeah, that's the way to make things happen. Nice work. Heck
Thanks.
yeah. Okay, so I got a question that's slightly off topic, but kind of relevant. When you guys are at home, and you are going through your most consistent kind of meal direction, is there an ethnicity or a country of origin where you tend to like start your cooking from? Does that question make sense? So, there's everything is going to have a base. Is there anything where we really start from most frequently, or the most like go to?
That's hard for me to answer because I don't do a lot of cooking at home. My wife does. Like I mentioned, she's a dietitian, and but like I said, we eat mostly plant-based. A lot of tofu dishes. She's Korean, so we try to get a lot of Asian cuisine in there.
Nice.
Korean dishes. I don't know.
So,
just
is that heavily fermented and in that type of Korean base?
It can be.
Okay.
She tries to, like with the kimchi and stuff, it can be heavily fermented.
Yeah.
But that's and very spicy too, and a lot of like little dishes and things.
Yeah, it's fun.
Chris, is your go-to Italian?
No, and my wife is not happy. That is not my go-to. She absolutely loves my Italian food, but
I'm sure
I take a really, I guess it's a really odd approach or bizarre, but every time I drop a pan on the stove or whatever it is, or start thinking up things, I put myself to a challenge. I want to approach every single dish in a different way, with everything that the last 25 years is going up here in my brain.
Wow.
And that to me, that's learning, that's living through food, and I approach different ingredients all the time, but yeah, I wish I was more that, I don't know the right term for it, but I wish I maybe was a little bit more structured that way. But I went to a French culinary school, so I have a lot of French influence, and I grew up Italian, so I guess European. But honestly, one of the things when I'm not writing recipes, and this is something, again, my wife doesn't like, but I will make something like she will be in love with, or guests or friends, but I will not recreate that again. And it's just whatever. I mean, that came and gone. It didn't, may have interested me, may haven't, but I want to put something else in that, that's just my approach. That keeps my wheels turning and keeps me interested. But there's a time and place for tradition, though. There is.
Fair.
I definitely carved that out. You know, that's usually when my mom's around or something like that. And we'll pull up some. We'll
Smart
pull out,
son.
yeah, you know, because she yells at me. She says it's not. You have to do it this way. Be done with it. You know, the
Bless her
onions
heart.
cannot be cut perfect. They need to be cut like a grandma chop.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, when she's around, I have to stick to her recipes. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. Delicious.
No, that's fair.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm curious about the fusion between French and vegetarian, because French is so animal protein heavy. Has that been an asset into drifting into towards the vegetarian creations?
You know, excuse me. I get yes and no. You know, I see yes, but there are a lot. It is heavy meat, but you know, I found just through my experience, I got to travel throughout Europe. I lived in Italy for a while. I did some cooking classes. I traveled from the north to the south of Italy, and you know, one thing that really hits home is the way they treat the way vegetables are treated in Europe, and many times in the homes or restaurants, the plants are celebrated, and the meat is an accent, or it's on the table, but it might be, you know, this table of vegetables that were grown in the gardens, prepared all different ways. But then you would have one celebration of maybe a pheasant, but that pheasant is small. It was grown on property. It's very flavorful. It was free range organic, but that wasn't really the celebration that I experienced. So I think, you know, there were many influence recipes, yes, but there also, I got to see how much the plants were celebrated, and that inspired me living there. You know, it would be something as simple as, you know, slicing a tomato and just putting, you know, a regional olive oil on there and a regional vinegar on there and sea salt, and that's it. It's celebrating that seasonal tomato that we're enjoying this at the moment. And then also I think that even adds a little bit of mindfulness into it, but that's a whole other topic. But so I hope I answered your question.
Yeah,
but
for sure. For sure.
I have something that's going to tie in that mindfulness word that you just mentioned, Chris. There's a good section of the book too about farmers market tips, which I think is really rad. It's something that my wife and I enjoy here in the Phoenix area, and we enjoy going to the farmers markets, and we enjoy picking out the vegetables that, you know, with our hands, etc. With and it's just more of an intimate experience. And so with the whole mindfulness word, and then Anthony, like I know you mentioned in the beginning that there was possibly a second book, or is a second book coming that has more of a mindfulness piece or the psychology based take in there, or outlook in there. So like just a couple of thoughts maybe from both of you guys, how mindfulness plays into maybe your daily life, and or the future cookbook, or even this one itself.
Mindfulness and daily, you know, I do a lot of mindfulness classes through my work as a psychologist at the VA. Like I mentioned, there's a whole health program we have going. So I do some mindfulness work through that class with veterans. And just on a daily basis, it's something I incorporate as much as I possibly can through just my own quiet practice, and then just through daily actions, always keeping that in mind, the concept of mindfulness, because that's what's really cool about mindfulness. It's not just a practice that's isolated from other things you do. It's something that can be incorporated in anything you do, whether it's, cooking, washing dishes, walking, as you guys probably know. So I try to infiltrate it into everything as much as I possibly can. But it's hard. It's always a challenge. I don't think I've ever, or will ever master it fully, but it's something I strive for.
Love that.
Yeah, I agree, Anthony, and Anthony has also kind of taught me a lot about mindfulness and through our discussions and through creating this book. But I think getting back to the farmers market, I see mindfulness in two ways immediately. Is I get to know what I did was I got to know my vendors who I was purchasing from through farmers markets that had their own farms. And then that turned into them inviting me to their farm to help them plant. And to get your hands, to be in the moment and to actually get your hands into the soil, and you're helping farmers that are growing food for people on an organic level, to be able to to rip off a piece of basil, a leaf of basil from a plant that's still warm from the sun, and to put it in your fingers. I do every time I go to a farm. I do that always with anything, a vegetable, but to experience that feel, and also then you're rubbing it in your fingers, and now you're starting to, that aroma is starting to get kicked up into your nose, and it triggers things in your mind to start going into really beautiful places, to be quite honest. But so I always encourage everyone to start a garden. It's really difficult, and if you don't have the space, because I didn't. I grew up gardening with my grandfather. He was an urban gardener before that was even a thing, which is crazy. But I always refer back to him. I'll never forget the first time I tasted a tomato from his plants. But it's that mindfulness that I'll never forget. But part two is, I will say this all day, every day. I've cooked thousands of recipes, thousands of dishes, and the best ones that came out that it was when you're in the moment, where you take your time, your mind is in that recipe, and you're taking your time sauteing your onions, your garlic, you're adding your olive oil, you're smelling that oil hit the pan, that hot pan, that's aromas are coming up. You're taking your time to slice tomatoes. That dish, when you just carve out some time to appreciate that recipe is going to be awesome. And I always tell people, so that's mindfulness right there. I mean, you have all your senses when you're cooking. So if you're in the moment, it's triggering you. I know if someone in my house is cooking something and I know they're cooking an egg, if I listen, I know when that egg's done. I'll get out of my seat and I'll run into the other room and be like, we got to get that out of the pan. It's being in the moment. We don't want to overcook that egg. We got to get it out. So I use that approach, and now it's just part of me now. But I love to take that time, and also if you start to get family members or friends involved, and this is a whole nother layer where food just comes together through recipes, and it's really touches everybody, and probably they'll never forget that, honestly. But yeah, I think mindfulness in cooking is just, it took me a long time to figure it out. I grew up with fast kitchens, fast paced. It was about cranking food out. I've cooked for thousands of people, parties for 600, no problem. But once I started thinking or working with mindfulness and thinking how this can really play a great part, it's there, So, I encourage everyone too. A lot of people oh, I can't cook in the kitchen. I can't cook. I'm a terrible cook. I just don't like it when the recipes come out. I'm like, don't think like that. Who cares if the recipe comes out good or bad, like whatever. It's not going to be inedible, right? It's going to be good. So I don't know. That's kind of my approach with culinary and mindfulness.
Yeah.
And the same thing could be said with eating the meal too, as you know, you're even just sitting down right before the meal starts, just to sit there and pause just for a few moments or a few seconds and just take in the smell, just get grounded into yourself and focus on your breath for a moment, breathing in the smells, and then doing that with the first bite of food, tasting as much as you can in that one first bite. It really slows you down and takes you into the present moment.
Heck yes.
And that could be really powerful for a lot of people who are sort of like Chris described in the kitchen, could be fast paced. We live in a fast paced every day, every moment is fast paced, and we just to slow down and do that before a meal can be really powerful and help a lot of people with even eating disorders, just to be able to slow down and take this mindfulness approach to eating.
Yeah.
Beautifully
said. Well, guys, thank you so much for carving out this amount of time. Brian, any last thoughts from you?
I think that's a great way to end it. That's a heck of a way to sort of encapsulate you both of your all's energy. Appreciate the heck out of you guys. And this has just been a blast. I think our audience is going to find some real value in this for sure.
Chris, Anthony, anything on your end that you want to get out before the end of this? You want to tell people where they can best locate Killer Plant-Based Cooking?
Yeah, right now it's available at Amazon for sale, and just stay tuned. You know, we'll be having some blogs coming out and another book eventually.
Maybe spices.
What's that?
Maybe a spice line.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I like that. What's the name of your all's website again? Just shoot that out, because that was a cool spot to kind of peek around and stuff. Lots of good content there as well.
lookwithineducation.com.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, appreciate the heck out of you guys. Thank you. We'll look forward to connecting on round number 2.